Jihyun Yun is a Korean-American author from the San Francisco Bay Area, a winner of the Prairie Schooner Prize. Her debut poetry collection, Some Are Always Hungry, was published by the University of Nebraska Press in 2020. Her debut young adult novel, And the River Drags Her Down, is forthcoming in fall 2025 with Knopf Teen in the US and Rock the Boat in the UK. I had the great pleasure of meeting Jihyun during Open Mouth's Poetry Festival back in 2020. I was ecstatic to read her fiction debut. I can't wait for you to read it too. You can pre-order it now and pick it up in stores next Tuesday, October 7th. Can you tell me more about your grad school experience?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I attended New York University's MFA in poetry from, oh, why am I already forget, 2014 to 2016. And I had a lovely time. I, of course, learned a lot, made a lot of lifelong friendships, and I had the honor to learn from my poetry heroes like Sharon Olds and Yusuf Komunyakaa, who was my advisor. But I think that my greatest gift from my time in the program was it was the first time that my dreams to become like a writer with a capital W was taken with any sort of gravity. Um, I was studying psychology during undergrad, and to tell my friends and family that I want to go to poetry school, you just see their faces kind of glaze over and question marks appearing all over. Um, But when I was in the program, learning with my cohort and studying with the professors that had made poetry both their like loves and their livelihoods, I felt very validated for the first time. And yeah, it helped me dream up different possible futures that I didn't really think was possible for me before. So it was a very important time for me.
Is that where you met Threa?
No, we met through through Instagram DMs. I
Okay.
don't, yeah, I've actually only met her one time in person and she's awesome.
Yeah, I love her. We talked about you a lot when it was announced that you were working on a novel. So
Oh,
it's a very full circle moment.
yeah, full circle.
How did your time in grad school impact your writing?
Hmm. I don't know if this is going to sound bad, but to be completely honest with you, like, I don't know if grad school itself impacted my writing in a huge way. Like I said before, like, I learned a lot, like, don't get me wrong. But when, like, young writers come up to me and say, is an MFA necessary to become an author? I always tell them no, just because I don't think that there's anything I learned in the program that I wouldn't have been able to learn by myself through independent study. Um, I'm sure I learned faster, definitely learned faster, but was it formative in a way that I think my writing quality would be like severely impacted today had I not gone to grad school? I can't say that I feel that way. Um, However, what my time at grad school did really help me with was it like helped me get very comfortable with failure, like which I feel is almost as integral to a healthy writing life as the actual writing itself. And going to workshop and having poems ripped to shreds, it was like a scabbing that I really needed to develop. And having a safe place to fail made me feel like more adventurous with writing because I wasn't so afraid of rejection anymore. And Lord knows that that's like very helpful now that I'm in trad pub and trad pub can be so brutal. So
Don't I know it? Um,
yeah.
I think it's so cool that you've worked for the Calm app. Can you talk a bit more about that and how you got involved and what exactly you did for them?
Yeah, I started writing for Calm in, I think I started writing for Calm in 2020. So it was like shortly after lockdown happened. And I think the creative director at the time had read my book, Some Are Always Hungry, and they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to audition. I thought it was a scam at first, but I did audition. I got uh, my first gig, and at that beginning, like the beginning years, I was writing for them a lot. I was turning in about a story a month, and that was like such a life raft because, I was working food service at the time, and like everybody else during the lockdown, I'd lost my job. So that really kept me afloat. And I had a lot of like really interesting experiences working with them too. I've written sleep stories and like ASMR scripts that were read by like Sam Hewen and Camila Cabello, and most recently Rita Moreno, which is like, I know I have a book coming out, but this kind of remains the most surreal thing that's happened to me in my writing life so far. Yeah, so that's how I got started with that.
That's so cool. Okay, let's talk about your book. How did And the River Drags Her Down come to be?
I I feel like everything started at the pandemic. I started writing it during the pandemic. Of course, like all of us were experiencing so much global mourning, but I was also kind of experiencing a lot of personal emergencies. Like at the time, somebody in my family got diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer, and prognosis was bad. It was terminal, and me and like my family members were kind of surreal experience of grieving somebody who was still right there. And so I was writing through it. I was writing vignettes, kind of thought experiments about grief. Like, for example, what would it be like if I could have like a bargaining chip to actually put down during the bargaining stages of grief? Or if I can reverse the loss, would it actually be better for me and my community? Or would there be fallout? And I initially thought I was writing another poetry collection or like a part of a poetry collection, but as I was writing, I kind of started to feel like I want characters to live out these inquiries fully, so that I could have more of an answer for myself. And so slowly the characters emerged a lot later than like the actual thesis of the book. And so I kind of tripped and fell my way into a novel. Um, but yeah, those were the circumstances in which I started.
I feel like I remember reading somewhere that this was partly inspired by mythology. Is that the case?
Yeah, very, very, very loosely. It's based off of a Korean folk ghost story called The Tale of Changwa and Hongmyeon, which is about two sisters who die by drowning under kind of nefarious circumstances. And then they enlist the help of this magistrate to like solve the circumstances of their death. And I wanted to retell this story, but like in a way that gives the sisters a little bit more agency instead of relying on the magistrate that comes to town. So, you know, I let one of the sisters survive the drowning, and then the other sister, I gave her like a corporeal like form in which to seek her own vengeance. So it's a very loose retelling, but all the characters are there. The two sisters. There's a rat that is prominent in the original fairy tale. The magistrate is a character named Mark Moon in the book. So
I loved so much about the characters. I really loved the relationships they developed throughout. Is Jade Acre based on a real place?
it is. It's a mishmash of two places. It's Mendocino, California. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's like a gorgeous tourist town in California, and it's like such stunning natural beauty. And then I also incorporated kind of the vibes of a place called Eureka, California. So it's like tall evergreen forests, very foggy, very wet winters, despite being in California. Also, like a pretty homogenous, demographic. Um,
Something else I found really interesting is that the magic passes through the matrilineal line instead of the other way. Patrilineal?
Mhm.
Is that what that's called?
I think so.
What led to that decision?
So, since the magic system originally in the book stemmed from the need to feed others during a famine, I felt like the matrilineal line was most logical just because of the way that cooking and feeding has traditionally, especially like after the introduction of Confucianism in Korea, been thought of as women's work. Um, and that's true like both on the peninsula and in the diaspora. So that's kind of like the baseline logic that I used for that. But I also felt like it was a good kind of physical demonstration of unhealthy cycles being passed down from mother to daughter through generations.
When did you figure out the science behind resurrection and how has it been refined over time?
The science of resurrection. Honestly, I think that the magic system in my book is pretty loosely constructed. It's kind of based off of a childhood belief that I had. So when I was younger, my grandma was an avid gardener and she would like take chicken bones that she baked and also like eggshells and bury them in our garden plots to make the soil like more nutrient rich. And in my child brain, I would like be watching her and be like, she's gonna harvest chickens from there. And that's kind of where the bones of my magic system in this book kind of came from. After that, I tried to make it feel a little bit more logical by adding parameters like you can't create something from nothing, right? So the regenerating corpse takes energy from the magical body that's reviving it and like the environment around it. But other than that, I think it's like a pretty loose magic system.
I wonder if you hadn't had those parameters, if it would appeal to like more younger audiences, whereas just like adding the parameters made it so much darker. But I felt like it was necessary. But I do question the audience for the book. Not in like a I question the audience, like who's gonna read this. I don't mean it in that sense. I just mean like what age group would read this and um be like or like have this marketed to them.
You know, it's interesting. When I was going out on submission for this book, my agents were kind of pitching it as YA crossover. So they sent it to predominantly YA editors, but they also sent it to a handful of adult editors. And I actually did end up getting calls with some adult horror editors who felt like it could plausibly be edited towards an adult audience. But I just felt like thematically it felt so YA to me. A lot of concerns that is probably more resonant with younger audiences. So that's kind of why I chose to go the YA route. But yeah, maybe it's a
Yeah,
little bit dark, but I think young audiences
I'm not surprised
like
at
can
that
handle a
at
lot of
all.
darkness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. I love hearing submission stories because it's fascinating to see like how a book is pitched and how it develops post pitch. But yeah, that's not
Mhm.
surprising to me at all that it was originally considered a crossover. And I do think it will find its audience. I do. It's such a good book. It is great.
Oh, thank you.
The struggles of the eldest daughter are a prominent theme in the book. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. I think a lot of people that would read the book would probably assume that I have siblings. I don't. I'm an only child. So I don't know if I could convincingly speak on the experience of eldest daughters. But when I was writing River, I was thinking a lot about my own upbringing. Sorry if you could hear the cars outside. I was thinking about my childhood, growing up with my older cousin. And as a result of that, like the relationship between Sujin and Mide very closely resembles the relationship between me and my cousin. So our families all worked. We were indeed latchkey kids. And because my cousin is 3 years older than me, I was very much her ward and her responsibility. And she would do a lot of the stuff that Mita does for Sujin in the book. Like she would walk to pick me up from elementary school, would cook for us, keep me alive in the home. And when writing, I was like thinking a lot about how being thrust into a de facto caretaker position when you yourself are a child inevitably kind of like rearranges your relationship to your family, but also to yourself. Like, I think in a lot of ways, it kind of made her a peer to my adult family members. And it kind of divorces you from your own childhood in that you have to start thinking about your own needs in a hierarchy, which I don't know, I don't really know that much about developmental sciences, but it doesn't seem like something that a young child should actively have to be thinking about yet. And I haven't had a conversation with her about this yet, about how, she thinks it might have impacted her, but because I think she thought of the role as kind of a given. But I was just trying to think while writing this about the overt and also like the covert ways that that role, often foisted onto eldest daughters, can echo throughout a life. So those are the kind of things I was thinking about.
You mentioned being a latchkey kid. Can we talk a bit about the impact of the latchkey kid phenomenon on YA conflicts?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact is it's convenient, right? Like there is the trope of the dead parents or like the absent parents, and this is like a way to give the teenage characters a chance to like fully be at the mercy of their own bad decisions without like a parental protective barrier. And so for me, it was the most convenient way to do that without, having her not have her father figure.
Yeah, on a related note, this subverts the absent parent phenomenon slightly because it makes the sister a kind of stand-in mother, which you did bring up with your older cousin. But I loved how that was ultimately addressed. Like I liked that there was a reckoning there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. It was interesting to like write a protective figure that like eventually kind of becomes a character that everybody else needs protection from. So to flip that dynamic was kind of fun for me to work with.
Going back to experiences in childhood, losing 5 teeth in 1 week is so wild. Do you have any baby tooth related memories of your own?
Yeah, I feel like I keep harkening back to my grandma. I'm gonna do it again. So there's a scene in the book where, for people who haven't read it yet, which I guess is everybody since it's not out, but one of the characters goes out to throw her teeth into the sky because her mom says if it doesn't come back down, that means God has taken them and is going to grant you a wish. And that was drawn from my childhood experience when my grandma would do the same thing with me. I would throw them into the sky and they would get stuck in like a tree branch or like a roof awning. And I would think that God had taken them and I would be so hyped about it. And I wanted to incorporate that memory as kind of like an homage to my grandma because she imbued a lot of daily magic into my childhood. So, yeah.
That's really sweet. Conversation that I really enjoyed was when Mark's mom said not letting go is the only prerequisite of a haunting. I wondered if you could speak a bit on your decision to have Mark's mom be the one to deliver the novel's core message.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this question, by the way, because I didn't even realize that I'd had her deliver the book's like core message until you mentioned it. And unconsciously, I think I must have made the decision to have like a tertiary character deliver the novel's thesis because the other characters like Sujin, her father, and Mark are all kind of like too deeply in their feelings to see the situation clearly. And I think if Sujin had started off the book already understanding this, then the book would not have happened. Like the resurrection probably would not have happened at all. So Mark's mother is the one that has like the appropriate emotional distance to understand this. And like she's also a death worker, so I think that gives her like an additional layer of clarity around the situation.
I love this book because it's so like beautifully written, but I also love it because it's so full of like craft advice. I think maybe even unintentionally.
Okay.
Can we talk a bit about the importance of names and naming throughout the book?
Yeah, I'm assuming that you mean Mita being unable to remember her first name when she's resurrected. So I chose to really emphasize like her amnesic aspect of her as a ghost because her first name means future in Korean, and her last name was also chosen specifically because Han is like a cultural concept in Korean. Just a spark notes like rundown of what Han actually means. It's a term that was coined during the colonial period by a Japanese art critic. And it was like coined to mean like beauty and sorrow, but also like stagnancy in the Korean psyche and art, which was a pretty common colonial stereotype of Koreans at the time. And it was a term coined to like feign sympathy, but also like benevolence, but like was ultimately used to justify the colonization of the peninsula. In any case, despite the dubious background of the term's origins, Han's since been adopted and reclaimed in Korea to mean like a deeply entrenched resentment and sorrow over historical grievances. And so to have Mita forget her first name, which means future, and to only be left with her Han, her like resentment, felt like kind of a way to emphasize that her sister had brought her back into a reality where the future is inaccessible and she can only be drawn back to like her past's trauma cycles.
Wow. Do you have a favorite scene in the book that you're excited for people to read? And I can stick this under like a spoiler section if it is a spoiler.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that this will be a spoiler. So there is, without giving too much away, there's a scene at the near the end where Sujin and her father have a conversation beneath a Christmas tree. And I'm really excited for people to read it because it was very cathartic and healing for me to write. And I think it will be polarizing just because like it is a very slow scene, like right near where the climax should be happening. But I do hope that particularly young readers who are experiencing friction and miscommunication in the home might feel like it resonates with them.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful scene.
No.
Can you give our viewers a prompt?
Yes. Write an elegy for yourself.
Whoa. I feel like I've had my students do that in the past, and it's always so interesting to see the things that people want to be remembered for.
Right. I love like reading people writing elegies for themselves and also like self-portrait poems of themselves.
What do you most hope people take away from this book?
I hope that people take away that healing is non-linear and incomplete, and that there are moments like even after the loss, many years after the loss, that will feel like insurmountable, but there's also a lot of joy waiting for you too, if you let it come. It's something that I'm still trying to convince myself of. So.
That's beautiful. And then I randomly had this question and I didn't know where to stick it, but what is it with American high schools and planting Bradford pear trees?
Was your school like that too? I thought it was just mine.
No, I like that's one of the things that I remember probably most from high school is just like the horrible smell of those trees.
Oh my God, I know. It's like those and like ginkgo trees are tied for the worst smell, but at least ginkgo trees are like beautiful, you know?
Maybe it's just an American thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Can you talk a bit about how you go about selecting point of view in your work? Because I think the book actually starts in first person, which was kind of exciting because it's like you're in the mind of somebody who's died, which was brought back a little bit throughout, but it wasn't really the central point of view.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely a trial and error sort of writer. So I need like a period of time during the first disaster draft to just kind of like try everything on. Because I guess I'm just like not cerebral, like I can't logic my way through things. So River's first draft had like all the POVs you could imagine until I realized that like, I don't know, I like that comfortable distance of third person. And also it helped make feel a little bit more like fairy tale-esque, which was important to me since it was technically a retelling. Um, but yeah, those first person scenes, like the prologue and then the section breaks, like those were the only things that survived from the initial draft of like the first person POV.
I think that's another thing that sets it apart from like the standard YA right now. Because I think like pretty much every YA in recent years has been first person present. And I feel
Oh
like
yeah, there's been a lot of that.
adult tends to be more like third person. But yeah, no, I love that you sold this as a YA. I hope it opens doors because I did like enjoy that storybook aspect of it. I want to celebrate the line, secrets traveled fast in Jade Acre, and the most surefire way to prevent one from spreading was to keep it the hell away from English. And also, I could pierce my eyes with you and it wouldn't hurt, which is a Korean uh, idiom. I'm curious to know how your multilingual background impacts your writing.
Sure. So my language capabilities are pretty lopsided. Like Korean was the first language I learned, but English is not my primary, and my Korean is kind of just like stalled at the conversationally fluent level, which is, of course, like super frustrating for me because I would love to be more capable. I would love to read books in Korean. But I also kind of like to think of the opportunities of like that unevenness in my fluency. Like something I like to toy with in my writing a little bit are the mistranslations that sprout from my lack of fluency and also like the artistic possibilities there. Like, for example, there's this Korean idiom that goes, 가는 말이 고와야 오는 말이 곱다 or something, which means the words that leave your mouth must be beautiful in order for the words that return to you to be beautiful. Essentially saying, don't be a gossip, right? But the word 고와 in this idiom means beautiful, but it also sounds extremely similar to the word for orphan. So I used to think that the phrase translated to the words leaving your mouth must be orphaned in order for them to return to you beautiful, which I think is interesting, you know, almost more interesting than the original idiom. And those are the sorts of kind of opportunities, I think, being bilingual, but more specifically, like incompletely bilingual affords me as a writer.
That's fascinating. Yeah, it also inspires a lot of thought in terms of like what you can do with language.
Are
On
you also
that note,
bilingual? Oh,
yes, I
sorry.
am. I speak Urdu, but I don't like speak it. I like understand it because my parents still
Mm,
speak to me in Urdu, but
mm.
I've lost the ability to speak it. But I'm curious to try that out to like explore the idioms and possible mistranslations.
Yeah.
How does writing novels differ from writing poetry? And what was the most surprising thing you learned while making the transition?
Mm, maybe you could relate since you are also writing novels and you're also a poet. But for me, I felt like the experience of writing a poem was like trying to seek like the essence of a feeling or a moment, while the experience of writing a novel is like panning the camera back and like trying to capture all the different like external machineries that's taking the characters to the thesis of the novel. I guess, like a distillation versus building blocks, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of plot points and like subplots happening in this book. How did you keep the plot lines organized while writing?
I have a prompt for this. So when I'm drafting, I like to make these like, I don't know if you can see like these graphs. So on the, this is called the y-axis. Yeah, like I think the y-axis, I will have like um, arc intensity, and then I'll have chapter by chapter, and then I'll kind of like graph where each of the subplots are kind of going, so that I could see where they intersect. And I don't want them all to climax at the same time necessarily. So it kind of like helps me to have a visualization. Um, I know that a lot of my peers use Scrivener to keep track of all their plot lines, but for some reason, like I've never been able to figure out how to use Scrivener. So I use the analog method, and it's been working pretty well for me so far. So
That's awesome. I love seeing people's process. I actually have a Scrivener tutorial for just like setting up a novel in Scrivener, and it has over 30,000 views. It's probably the only video on my channel that has that many views, but it's been so successful, and I still, and this is a secret that I'm definitely not going to post and remove from this, but it's the only video that's still like getting me followers and like comments every day. And I think it's
oh,
the only
really?
thing driving my whole channel. So
Maybe I should go give it a watch because it seems like it'd be cool. Is that what you tend to use when you're drafting, Scrivener?
yeah, I've found it really useful just in terms of envisioning things, but I could see where like having more of like a line graph would be more helpful. But Scrivener has like a corkboard view and a outline view. And another thing that
Oh,
I really love about Scrivener is actually for poetry. You can create like snapshots, and it'll just like automatically date the the snapshot that you take. And so like
oh.
while you're editing, every time I'm editing something, I'll just like create snapshots, and you can create like an unlimited number in each file. So it's really
Hmm.
nice just to have like the reassurance that you're not losing work while you edit.
Huh. Yeah, maybe I'll give your video a watch and see if I could give Scrivener another try.
Yeah, and it's kind of an old video. I think I've uncovered like more since then.
Mm.
But yeah, people seem to love it. It's insane to me how well it's done. I feel like it's the only video that's done that well on my channel.
Oh, congratulations.
If you just go and like look at my channel and click popular, it's like the only one that has like 30,000 views.
That's huge.
Do you tend to write in the three-act structure?
It's a little hard for me to say because River is the first book that I've like completed. But the one that I'm currently working on with my editor, book two on the contract, it's a four-act structure. So I'm hoping that I'm always able to like figure out which mode of structuring a novel works for each individual story.
What do you wish adults would learn from YA?
There's a lot. I think there's a lot for adults to learn from reading books meant for young readers. I mean, both like YA, but also like middle grade, there's so much to learn. But I think the main one would be like empathy for teenagers. Like, I can't really think of a more disdained age category than teens. Like, we disparage them for big feelings. We disrespect the media that they love. We look down on their uh, like opinions as if they don't have complex interior worlds already. And it's a lot of pressure that they have. And I feel like a lot of adults, myself like totally included in this, are removed enough from their teen years that it's hard to access the memory of what that felt like. And I think reading YA is a good opportunity for adults to like once again see the world through like a young person's eyes. And it's an excellent reminder to adults of what that experience was like and to not dismiss young people's concerns wholesale just because adult problems seem higher stakes to us.
You touched on this a little bit already, but did you have more that you wanted to say about the submission process?
Yeah. So something that I thought was interesting about submission that I'd never thought of before was that there's like multiple different strategies for going on submission. So I know that some agents prefer to go into small batch queries. But for me, my agents did a huge single rounds. Like we went out to 30 editors at once. And I don't know really what like the pros and cons of each method are. But yeah, we went out on a huge round and it was a kind of a whirlwind. Like it was radio silence for I think like the first week or two. And then after the first editor reached out indicating interest, then like the other editors started to like read quicker and get back to me. So it really kind of feels like it only takes one sort of feeling with submission. And yeah, I was lucky. I was very lucky to go as quickly as I did. And I got to speak to a lot of wonderful editors that were willing to take a chance on me. So I continue to be very grateful and frankly, very bewildered still. And yeah, just very lucky.
That's so awesome. Which writers inspire you? Who do you see yourself being in conversation with?
I don't know about in conversation with, since these are such great writers, and I wouldn't put myself in conversation with them necessarily, but I'm always inspired by my first poetry heroes, like Suji Kwak Kim, Liang Lee, who was the first person to kind of bring me into creative writing, to want to go that route. Yusef Komunyakaa. I love both the novels and poetry collections of Kaveh Akbar and Ocean Vuong. And in the YA space, you know, I am really inspired by the works of fellow horror and gothic novelists like Taylor Groth, Wenyi Lee, Andrew Joseph White, and yeah, the list could go on and on.
Can you tell me more about your writing process?
I like to write either very early in the morning or very late at night, when it kind of feels like I'm in a submarine and the world outside is like dense and quiet and dark. Yeah. But when I'm on deadline, I can't necessarily do that all the time. So I try to write for at least a few hours on and off every day. I like to log my progress with like stickers and pens to like engage the kindergartner that's still alive and well in my brain. And I use the Pomodoro method with my trusty timer because I have a hard time focusing for long stretches of time. So I have to break it up.
You are such a poet. I love it.
Is the Pomodoro method very popular amongst poets?
No, I was more talking about the submarine line that you just used. It was just so unnecessarily beautiful.
Oh.
What are your best strategies for revision? How does poetry revision differ from novel revision?
Poetry revision for me is very different from novel revision because I can revise the poem right after I finish the first draft. Wow, there's a big car outside. Sorry about that. Yeah, I could revise the poem right after I finish the first draft. And if I tried to do that with a novel, like my brain would explode probably. So I guess it's like the velocity at which I can touch it again. And the best strategy for revision so far is there's a craft book by Matt Bell called Refuse to be Done. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain it well, but I'll try. So he advocates for like an exploratory first draft, no outline for the first draft, just let the story come out exactly as it wants to come out of you. And then afterwards, you have the first draft, you outline exactly your first draft as it came out, scene by scene, chapter by chapter. And then instead of trying to dive into the 100K monstrosity that you just wrote, you're outlining, you're like editing the outline itself. So like giving yourself a roadmap, and that kind of breaks it up into more manageable, like less daunting steps, I guess. And I found that very helpful because when I wrote my first draft of River, it was like 120K, and I was like, there's no way, like there's absolutely no way. But being able to first edit an outline, like it made it like compute a little bit easier for me.
Wow. We've made it to the last question. What are you working on right now?
It's not announced yet, but I can vaguely tell you that it's has ghosts. There are romantic elements, but it's not a romance, and it's dubiously new adult.
I love it. Okay. Was there anything I didn't ask that you hoped I would ask?
No, no, but this was really great, and I'm really grateful that you made time for me today.
Yeah, this was so wonderful. I'm so excited to go back through this and learn more from this book and from you. Thank you so much, Jihyun.
Yes, thank you
So
so
lovely to
much.
see you, and I can't wait to celebrate you.
Oh, thank you so much.